what is she doing? Hacking, I think it was Russia, but I think we also get hacked by other countries and other people. And I can say that, you know, when we lost 22 million names and everything else that was hacked recently, they didn't make a big deal out of that. That was something that was extraordinary. That was probably China.
Can you stand here today once and for all and say that no one connected to you or your campaign had any contact with Russia leading up to or during the presidential campaign? And if you indeed do believe that Russia was behind the hacking, what is your message to Vladimir Putin right now?
He shouldn't be doing it. He won't be doing it. Russia will have much greater respect for our country when I'm leading it than when other people have led it. You will see that. Russia will respect our country more. He shouldn't have done it. I don't believe he'll be doing it more. Now, we have to work something out, but it's not just Russia. Take a look at what's happened. You don't report it the same way. 22 million accounts were hacked in this country by China. And that's because we have no defense. That's because we're run by people that don't know what they're doing. Russia will have far greater respect for our country when I'm leading it. And I believe, and I hope, maybe it won't happen, it's possible, but I won't be given a little reset button like Hillary. Here, press this piece of plastic. Guy looked at her like, what is she doing? There's no reset button. We're either going to get along or we're not. I hope we get along, but if we don't, that's possible too. But Russia and other countries, including China, which has taken total advantage of us economically, totally advantage of us in the South China Sea by building their massive fortress. Total. Russia, China, Japan, Mexico, all countries will respect us far more than they do under past administrations.
President Obama, of course, who commissioned that intelligence report. The president now weighing in during an exclusive interview late today with our George Stephanopoulos.
Bottom line, this time, Vladimir Putin got what he wanted.
Well, look, I think that what is true is that the Russians intended to meddle, and they meddled. I'll be honest with you, George, one of the things that I am concerned about is the degree to which we've seen a lot of commentary lately where there are Republicans or pundits or cable commentators who seem to have more confidence in Vladimir Putin than fellow Americans because those fellow Americans are Democrats. That cannot be.
Does that include the president-elect?
What I will say is that, and I said this right after the election, we have to remind ourselves we're on the same team. Vladimir Putin is not on our team.
George is exclusive with the president late today in his full interview with President Obama on This Week, Sunday morning with George.
Hearings on campaign fundraising focused today on former restaurant owner Charlie Tree, who raised more than $1 million for President Clinton and the Democrats. The money has since been returned. Investigators think that a lot of it came from one very elusive man in Asia. ABC's Linda Douglas reports.
Meet one of the most mysterious suspects in the campaign finance investigation, Yingluck Singh, also known as Mr. Wu, a multimillionaire from the Portuguese colony of Macau on the tip of mainland China. Mr. Wu evaded congressional investigators who went to Asia hoping to find him, but we caught up with him at one of his businesses in Macau. Wu says he made his fortune by being shrewd.
My philosophy is that I should not break the law, but I wouldn't mind bending it.
You solemnly swear.
But today, an FBI agent working for the Senate committee testified that Wu is not just a businessman, but an advisor to the Chinese government, money to his friend Charlie Tree. Tree, in turn, gave huge donations to the Democratic Party.
Overall, it appears to me that Mr. Tree relied upon Mr. Wu's foreign wire transfers to make his contributions to the DNC.
Senators were stunned to learn that beginning in 1994, Wu wired nearly $1 million to Tree, the former Little Rock restaurant owner and friend of President Clinton's. A mind-numbing chart showed how Tree moved the money through various accounts.
In your opinion, did Mr. Tree launder money?
Yes, sir, in my opinion, he did.
What did Mr. Wu want? Access to the president, in part. ABC News has learned Mr. Wu visited the White House at least 6 times. Wu won't talk about his transactions with Tree.
Charlie's my friend, but I don't want to comment further.
Today, ABC News talked with Tree in China, where he's monitoring the hearings. He says he is agonizing over whether to come home to the United States to defend himself. Linda Douglas, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
To the Panama Papers comes amidst growing concern about undisclosed campaign contributions here in the U.S., so-called dark money. The Washington Post reports through the end of January, 680 corporations had given nearly $68 million to super PACs in this election cycle, 12% of the $549 million raised by such groups. This figure does not include the untold amounts of dark money contributions to other groups that are not disclosed by the donor or the recipient. Now, some members of the Federal Election Commission, or FEC, are calling for greater enforcement of campaign finance regulations. FEC Commissioner Ellen Weintraub recently wrote a piece in the New York Times headlined, "Taking on Citizens United." She says, quote, "The American people deserve assurances from American corporations that they're not using the money of foreign shareholders to influence our elections." Weintraub goes on to call for federal and state policymakers to ensure corporations are not being used as a front to allow foreign money to seep into U.S. elections. The FEC is the government watchdog tasked with keeping federal elections fair, but it's come to a virtual standstill since its 3 Democratic and 3 Republican members are in partisan gridlock. So let's go right now to Washington, D.C., where we are joined by the Federal Election Commissioner Ellen Weintraub. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Commissioner Weintraub. Talk about your concerns in this election year.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me. Well, I have a variety of concerns this election year, as I'm sure a lot of Americans do, about the role of money in politics. There is, as you've noted, an increasing amount of dark money. We're seeing more contributions coming from fewer donors and with less transparency than we ever have before. And there are a lot of ways that the Federal Election Commission could help to shed more light on this money, to make sure that we're not getting foreign money into our elections, and to make sure that everyone is playing by the same set of fair, common sense rules.
So what is this foreign money? How is it getting in?
Well, here's the problem, Amy. I think that when Citizens United was handed down, a lot of people were somewhat taken aback by the notion of corporations having political opinions that they would need to express. But the court didn't actually find that corporations are people like human beings, sentient beings with opinions of their own, and obviously corporations don't get to vote. There are a lot of ways that corporations are different from human beings. What the court said, though, was then when human beings form together in corporations, when they gather together and use that legal framework, they don't lose any of their constitutional rights. This is a view that the court elaborated on in the Hobby Lobby case, which involved religious freedom. And I think if there's anything more counterintuitive than the notion of a corporation having political views, it's got to be the notion of a corporation having religion. But again, the court acknowledged that corporations are a legal fiction. They're there to protect the rights. To the extent that corporations have rights, they are there to protect the rights of the human beings that are behind them. The question then needs to be raised, what happens when those human beings don't actually have those rights? Associations of citizens forming together as corporations don't lose their rights to express themselves, to use money in order to get their point of view across, to fund communications, to make contributions. But a lot of corporations have foreign shareholders, and those corporations are using the money that is owned by those foreign shareholders to intervene in elections, and that's where we run the risk of foreign money coming into our elections.